The text came just 2 days before Thanksgiving. "We're not comfortable with your choices anymore, Catherine. There won't be a seat saved for you this year." I stared at the screen in my kitchen, the smell of roasted butternut squash, still, hanging in the air. It was from my sister, Elizabeth. No hello. No context. Just that. My hands trembled, but not from surprise. It wasn't the first time my family had made me feel like I didn't belong. Just the first time they put it in writing. The choice she was referring to, of course, was David. My husband. The man I'd fallen in love with slowly and completely. The man who made me laugh on long drives and remembered how I liked my tea. The man who also happened to be divorced, with 2 children from a previous marriage. That was all it took, in my family's eyes, staunchly Catholic, proudly traditional. I hadn't just married a man. I had committed a sin. One they believed justified banishment from family holidays, group texts, baby showers, and apparently, the annual Thanksgiving dinner. The irony? I had spent most of my life trying to avoid becoming the family disappointment. I went to Mass. I worked quietly as a librarian. I never partied, never rebelled. But the moment I chose love, that didn't come packaged the way they wanted. I became an outcast. I remember standing in the pantry that afternoon, holding my phone, reading that message again and again. "There won't be a seat saved for you." David walked in behind me, carrying a bag of groceries. When he saw my face, he didn't ask. He just pulled me into his arms. "I'll make a new table," he whispered into my hair. That was 3 years ago, and now, as I look out across our wide, candle-lit dining room, set for 30 guests, some related, some not, I realize something extraordinary. They may have taken away my seat at their table, but they never expected that one day I'd own the house with the biggest table of all. It started with a stranger's name in a neatly folded envelope. 3 years after that first Thanksgiving without my family, David received a letter from a law firm based in Richmond. The return address looked formal, the kind of thing that usually brings bad news. He opened it slowly, cautiously, while I stood at the sink rinsing blueberries for a pie. When he read the name aloud, Edward R. Whitmore, I saw something flicker across his face, confusion then disbelief. "My great-uncle," he said. "I haven't heard that name since I was maybe 10. I turned off the faucet. "You okay?" He nodded, eyes scanning the letter again. "He died, and left me everything." I blinked. Everything? His estate, his land, his apparently rather large fortune. I thought he was poor. He lived alone, no kids. Didn't even have a phone the last time I saw him. He passed me the letter. It was written in firm legalese, but the meaning was simple. David was now the sole heir to a 180-acre estate in rural Albemarle County, 20 minutes from the town where I grew up. The property included a historic colonial-style home, antique furnishings, a private library, a garden designed in the 1930s, and a staggering number of financial assets accumulated through long-held investments. I remember sitting down slowly on the kitchen stool. "Why you?" David shrugged. He always said the rest of the family wanted too much from him. I was the only one who didn't ask for anything. That sounded like David. 2 weeks later, we drove out to see the place. It was even more surreal in person. Wrought iron, gates, weathered stone steps, ivy curling up columns. The front door creaked open like it had been waiting. Inside, it smelled like cedar and dust and forgotten stories. Books lined the walls, hundreds of them. The dining room alone could seat 20, maybe more. And the windows. My God. The windows. Tall and arched, catching the light in a way that made the old wood floors glow gold. "This is—" I started, but didn't know how to finish. David just said, "Ours." We spent the next few months restoring it bit by bit, not to erase its past, but to make space for a new one. The kids helped paint. We added modern touches where needed, but kept the soul intact. It wasn't just a house. It was a rebirth, and as the seasons shifted and autumn crept in, I couldn't help but think about that text from Elizabeth, the one that told me I was no longer welcome. Because now, for the first time in my life, I didn't need their table. I had one of my own, and it was waiting to be filled. The first person to reach out was my cousin Laura. It started with a casual comment on a photo I posted. The estate's garden, golden leaves carpeting the stone path, Maya and Henry running beneath the trees. Nothing fancy, just a quiet moment I'd captured on a Sunday afternoon. Her comment? "Wow, this looks like something out of a movie. Is this your new home?" A week later, Elizabeth emailed me. Not called, emailed. Subject line: reconnecting. The message was short, polished, too measured to be sincere. "Catherine, I know it's been a while. I've been thinking about you. The kids miss their aunt. I'd love for us to talk. Maybe over coffee? Or better yet, we'd be happy to drive. Out for Thanksgiving if you're hosting. We could be a family again. Let me know." I stared at the message for a long time, letting each word settle into its proper weight. We could be a family again. As if family were something that could be, picked up when convenient and folded away when it no longer fit the aesthetic. David walked in while I was rereading it. I didn't say anything. Just turned the screen toward him. He read it silently, then asked, "Do you want to respond?" "No," I said, then paused. "Not directly." That night, we finalized our Thanksgiving guest list. It included our neighbors. The young couple across the street whose families cut them off after their wedding. A librarian from my branch who had spent the last 3 holidays alone after coming out to her parents. A widowed teacher James had met through the school, who hadn't celebrated a holiday in years. And Laura. Because she didn't pretend. She asked real questions. She never once told me I was wrong for loving who I loved. We printed invitations. Not digital. Actual paper, embossed with gold edges and autumn leaves. At the bottom, in italic script, it read, "This table was built for anyone who has ever been told they didn't belong." I didn't send one to Elizabeth. She had made it clear years ago where I belonged. And this year, for the first time, I finally believed her. The day before Thanksgiving, I stood in the middle of our new kitchen. Apron dusted with flour, hair pinned up, hands deep in pie dough, and realized something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the fragile kind you whisper to yourself in the dark, hoping it lasts, but the sturdy kind. The kind you can taste, the kind that settles into your bones like warm cider on a cold day. The house was alive. James was outside hanging string lights across the old oak trees, lining the back patio. Maya and Henry were in the parlor, arguing playfully over which playlist to use for dinner music. David's dog was curled up under the table, snoring softly. And I, Catherine, the family disappointment, the black sheep, was preparing to host a Thanksgiving feast in a house none of them knew existed until it was no longer theirs to access. I checked the seating chart we'd pinned to the corkboard by the fireplace. 22 names. None of them chosen out of obligation. All of them earned. At exactly 11:30 a.m., the doorbell rang. I opened the grand wooden door and found Ellie, James's co-worker, holding a giant bowl of stuffing and wearing a wide grin. "I hope I'm not early," she said. "I brought the good kind. None of that gluten-free nonsense today." I laughed and ushered her in. The scent of rosemary and sage followed her like a second coat. By 1:04 p.m., the long dining table was full, some seated, others still arriving, arms filled with homemade dishes, bottles of wine, and desserts with names I couldn't pronounce. One guest, an older woman named Helen, clutched her casserole and whispered, "I haven't been invited anywhere in 6 years. This means more than you know." We set her at the head of the table. Outside the window, just beyond the tree line, I noticed a dark SUV slowly driving by. It didn't stop, but it lingered, just enough. I didn't need to squint to know who it was. Elizabeth. She wouldn't come to the door, wouldn't ring the bell or step onto the porch. But she wanted to see, to glimpse the life she once felt, righteous enough to erase me from. And she did. She saw the lights, the music, the warmth pouring from the windows. She saw the new family, my family, lifting glasses and laughing loud. She saw everything she'd once assumed I couldn't build. And then the SUV turned around and disappeared down the gravel road. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel pity. I felt clarity. She chose silence, and I chose this. As dinner was served, I looked around at every face, seated at our long oak table, some scarred, some tender, all here, and lifted my glass. "To found family," I said. "To the ones who stay," someone echoed, and we clinked our glasses together, under the soft light, surrounded by laughter and second helpings, and people who had every reason to harden, but chose to love instead. That night, long after the last piece of pie had been eaten and the final coffee cup rinsed, I walked the halls of the house barefoot, the wooden floors creaking softly beneath my steps. The kids were asleep. Henry with one arm slung over his pillow like he was dreaming of dragons, and Maya curled into a tight ball with the old family quilt David's uncle had left, folded in the linen closet. The dining room still smelled like cinnamon and sage. Candles flickered low. A few plates sat soaking in the sink, but I couldn't bring myself to clean them just yet. The mess felt sacred, like proof. David found me in the parlor, staring into the fireplace, a half-finished glass of wine in my hand. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. "I'm better than okay. I'm full." He sat beside me, the firelight catching the lines at the corners of his eyes. "It was a good day." "It was more than that," I said quietly. "It was a new day, a new kind of family." He took my hand, laced his fingers through mine. "I'm proud of you." I looked down, let his words settle deep into that place inside me that had once housed only shame and self-doubt. "You know," I said, "for years I thought belonging meant staying where you started, that if you left, if you broke the rules, you lost your place." He squeezed my hand gently. "And now?" I exhaled. "Now I know. Belonging isn't given. It's chosen. It's built." He kissed the back of my hand, then stood and extended, his other to me. "Come on. Let's take one last walk through your estate before bed." I laughed, but I took his hand. We wandered room by room, turning off lights, whispering as if not to wake the house. Every corner had new stories now. People who'd once eaten alone, now full of food and laughter. Strangers who had become friends. Exiles who had found a seat. As we passed the library, I paused, reached into the drawer of the side table, and pulled out a simple manila envelope. "What's that?" David asked. I handed it to him. "The letter Elizabeth sent after she saw the photos online." He didn't open it. "Do you want me to read it?" "No," I said. "I just wanted you to know I never replied." He nodded once, understood immediately. We burned it in the fireplace before heading to bed. No drama, no closure needed, Just letting go. Because tonight, every chair around our table had been filled with people who saw us clearly and still stayed. People who had no interest in punishing us for choosing love over appearances. And that was enough. We climbed into bed, and as I drifted off to sleep, I felt something I hadn't known in a long, long time. Not relief, not victory, but peace, the kind that whispers, "You are no longer waiting to be invited in. You're the one holding the door now." The next morning, the house woke slowly. Sunlight filtered through the tall, mullioned windows, casting soft gold across the hardwood floors. In the kitchen, the remnants of yesterday's feast still lingered. Crumbled, napkins, a half-eaten pie, a gravy boat forgotten on the counter. I made coffee barefoot, wrapped in the old cardigan David always said made me look cozy and in command. The house was quiet, but not empty. There was a fullness to the silence now, like the walls themselves had absorbed the laughter, the clinking of glasses, the stories shared by people who had once been told they didn't belong anywhere. Maya wandered in first, still in her pajamas, her curls tangled, dragging her favorite stuffed fox behind her. "Are we doing it again today?" she asked sleepily. I smiled. "Doing what, honey?" "The big dinner, the party, the hugs." I knelt down, brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. "No party today, just us." She considered that. "Okay. Can we still have hugs?" I pulled her into my arms. "Always." Later that afternoon, I found myself back in the library, the room that had become my personal sanctuary in the estate. I sat at the writing desk by the window, the one overlooking the east field, and opened my journal. On the first page, I had once scribbled something in a moment of doubt, years ago. Maybe I'm the one who walked away. Now I gently crossed it out, and below, I wrote, "Maybe I didn't walk away. Maybe I just stopped chasing a place that no longer saw me." There was a soft knock at the door. David peeked in. "Mail just arrived," he said, holding up a small stack. "One's from your mom." I stiffened. He handed it over gently. The envelope was pale blue, handwritten, familiar. My mother's script, elegant, careful, heavy with hesitation. I opened it slowly, my hand steady. Inside was a card. On the front, an old painting of a winter farmhouse, snow gathering on the eaves. Inside, just one line. I saw the article. "You look happy." "I hope you are." No apology, no invitation, just that. And it struck me. Not as cruel, but as truth. My family hadn't changed. They hadn't opened their arms or rethought their words. They had only watched from the outside, as I built something that no longer needed their permission. I folded the card neatly, placed it in the desk drawer, then closed it. Because I had found something better than acceptance. I had found belonging, not by being allowed in, but by choosing not to wait outside. And this house, this table, this family, was proof that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't fight your way back into the place that rejected you. It's planting new roots where no one has to earn their seat. 1 week later, I stood on the wraparound porch of our estate, watching the late autumn wind scatter leaves across the long gravel drive. Inside, Meyer and Henry were decorating the Christmas tree with ornaments that didn't match and tinsel in all the wrong places. David was making cocoa, humming off-key to some old Bing Crosby tune. The house, once too big, too quiet, now felt like it was breathing, like it had always been waiting for us to fill it. I held a mug between my hands and looked out toward the gate, remembering the car that had parked there not so long ago. Elizabeth had sat behind the wheel, watching from a distance, never stepping out, never ringing the bell. She hadn't come back since, and she never would. But I didn't feel bitter anymore. That part of me, the one that used to ache for her validation, her approval, was gone. What remained was stillness, the kind that settles when you finally stop asking someone else to hand you your worth. A breeze lifted the edge of the invitation I had clipped to the porch rail. It was a printed card, just like the ones we sent last year. You're invited Thanksgiving at the Miller home. For all who've been told you don't belong, seats open, doors wide, hearts ready. We'd already received over 24 RSVPs. There was the art teacher from the elementary school whose husband had passed away last spring, a college student who'd come out to his family and hadn't been home since, an older couple whose children lived overseas and rarely called. We'd ordered extra folding chairs. James had cleared out the old barn for overflow seating and strung twinkle lights along the rafters. Maya called it the kindness barn. She wasn't wrong. I heard the door creak behind me. David stepped out, set his cocoa on the railing beside mine and wrapped his arms around my waist from behind. "Thinking about your family?" he asked softly. "Not really," I said. "I'm thinking about ours." He rested his chin on my shoulder. "It's a good one." I smiled. "The best." And it was. Not perfect, not traditional, but real. Built on laughter and second chances. On people who didn't flinch when you told them the hard parts. On a table full of mismatched plates and stories that mattered. I didn't get my seat back at their table. But I got something better. I built my own. And I filled it with the kind of love that doesn't require permission to stay. And that's how I learned that family isn't just blood. It's who stays when your name disappears from the group text. It's who shows up when you invite them. Not because they have to, but because they choose to. They thought they could banish me from the table. But I built one longer, kinder and wide enough for every soul who's ever been left out. What would you do if your family erased you for loving the wrong person? Tell me in the comments. Like, share, and follow for more true stories about quiet revenge and louder love.